Cowboy saw her cry and offered forever. After the groom laughed when she stepped off the train. She sat near the window of the train holding a small brown suitcase on her lap. The metal wheels clattered beneath her, steady and loud, like they were counting down the moments she had left before everything changed. Outside, the land slowly shifted from green fields to dry, open plains. The sky looked wide and endless, and for a moment she wondered if her future would feel the same way. Her name was Clara. She had read it once in a letter written in careful ink by the man who promised to marry her. Each word of that letter had felt warm when she first held it. He had told her the town was small but growing, honest but rough. He said life there would be simple, but they would build something real together. He told her he would be waiting at the station. Clara touched the edge of the letter in her pocket, worn thin from being folded and unfolded too many times. She had read it so often that she could hear his voice in her head. That promise was the reason she was on this train. That promise was why she had sold her mother's sewing machine, left her job, and said goodbye to the only home she had ever known. The train whistle blew long and sharp. People around her began to move, standing up, reaching for bags, fixing hats and coats. Clara stayed seated for a moment, her heart beating faster. Her dress was plain, the best one she owned, but it had been worn many times. The long trip had wrinkled it, and the dust from the road had dulled its color. She smoothed the fabric with her hands, wishing she had something nicer, something that made her look more confident than she felt. When the train finally slowed and came to a stop, the station came into view. It was smaller than she imagined. A wooden platform, a few buildings nearby, a handful of people waiting, no grand welcome, no music, just the sound of boots on wood and voices mixing with the wind. Clara stood and joined the line of passengers stepping down. As her feet touched the platform, she felt a strange mix of relief and fear. She had made it. There was no turning back now. She scanned the crowd, searching for the face she knew from memory. She saw strangers first, men with dusty hats, women holding baskets, children running along the edge of the platform. Then she saw him. He stood with two other men, laughing about something she couldn't hear. He looked just like she remembered, but different, too. His clothes were clean and well-fitted. His posture was confident, almost proud. For a second, her heart lifted. She took a step toward him. He turned and saw her. The smile on his face did not soften. It twisted. His eyes moved over her quickly, from her worn shoes to her tired face. Then he laughed, not quietly, not kindly. It was loud enough that the men beside him joined in. "Well, I'll be," he said. "That's what you look like after all that talk?" Clara stopped. The world around her seemed to fade. She felt every eye on the platform turned toward her. Heat rushed to her face. She wanted to speak, to explain, to remind him of the letters, the promises, but no words came. One of his friends nudged him and said something she couldn't hear. He waved it off and stepped closer, still smiling in that careless way. "I thought you'd be different," he said. "Guess the city didn't do you any favors." Not everyone laughed, but no one stopped him. Clara's hands tightened around her suitcase. Her fingers shook. She felt small, like the ground beneath her had suddenly dropped away. This was not how it was supposed to be. This was not the man who wrote gentle words by candlelight. This was not the welcome she had imagined during long nights of hope. "I came because you asked me to," she finally said, her voice barely louder than the wind. "People say things. Doesn't mean they always mean them." Then, as if she were no longer worth his time, he turned back to his friends. "Come on," he said. "Let's get a drink." Clara stood alone on the platform. The train behind her released steam with a heavy sigh, as if it too understood the weight of the moment. Around her, people continued on with their lives. Some whispered. Some looked away. A few stared without hiding their curiosity. She took a few steps forward, then stopped. She didn't know where to go. She didn't know anyone. The money she had left would barely last a few days. The town that was supposed to be her new beginning now felt like a closed door. Her eyes filled with tears. She tried to hold them back, but they came anyway, sliding down her cheeks before she could stop them. She turned slightly away from the crowd, hoping to disappear into the background. That was when someone noticed. He had been leaning against a post near the edge of the platform, watching quietly. A cowboy, rough-looking, with dust on his boots and sun-worn skin. He hadn't laughed. He hadn't looked away. He had seen the whole thing, and something about it didn't sit right with him. He noticed how she stood there, trying to be strong while her world fell apart. He saw the way she clutched her suitcase like it was the only thing keeping her upright. He saw the tears she tried to hide. For a moment, he hesitated. It wasn't his place, he told himself. Towns had their own business. People made their own choices. But then he remembered a time when he had arrived somewhere with nothing but hope and found none waiting for him. He pushed himself off the post and walked toward her. Clara heard footsteps and stiffened, expecting another cruel word or curious stare. But when she looked up, she didn't see laughter. She saw concern, real and quiet. "You all right, miss?" he asked. His voice was calm, steady, like he wasn't in a hurry to judge her or fix her, just asking. She tried to answer, but her throat tightened. She shook her head instead. He nodded, as if that answer was enough for now. He reached into his bag and pulled out a canteen, holding it out without stepping too close. "Water," he said. "Train rides dry you out." Her hand still shook as she drank. The water was cool, grounding her, reminding her she was still standing, still breathing. "You don't have to explain anything," he said gently, "but you don't look like someone who planned to be left alone today." The tears came again, heavier this time, not loud, not dramatic, just honest. The cowboy stayed where he was, giving her space, letting the moment pass without pushing. Around them. The platform slowly cleared. The town went on, unaware that a life had just cracked open at its edge. Clara wiped her face and handed the canteen back. "Thank you," she said quietly. He tipped his hat. "Name's Eli." It felt strange saying it out loud here, in a place that had already hurt her so deeply. As the last of the train's steam drifted away, Clara realized something important. The man she trusted had laughed and walked away. A stranger had stayed. And though she didn't know it yet, that small act of kindness on a dusty platform was the first step toward a future she never imagined, but one that would finally be real. Clara stood near the edge of the platform long after the train had gone. The noise faded, the steam disappeared, and the tracks became quiet again. People had already moved on, but the heavy feeling in her chest stayed. She felt like the town had swallowed her and left nothing behind but dust and shame. Eli stayed nearby, not too close, not too far. He leaned against a wooden post, pretending to check his gloves, but his eyes kept returning to her. He could see she was trying to be strong, but strength was slipping from her like sand through open fingers. After a while, Clara picked up her suitcase and took a few steps forward. She stopped again. The buildings all looked the same to her. She didn't know which way led to safety and which way led to trouble. Her shoulders sank. Eli noticed. He cleared his throat softly so he wouldn't startle her. "You got a place to go?" he asked, keeping his tone easy, like it was an ordinary question. "I thought I did," she said. Her voice was quiet but steady now, like the tears had drained something heavy out of her. He nodded, as if he had expected that answer. "Town's not big," he said, "but it can feel real lonely when you don't know anyone." She gave a small, sad smile. "I know." The wind moved dust along the ground, and somewhere a door creaked open and shut. Eli shifted his weight, thinking. He wasn't a man who spoke fast or made promises quickly. Life had taught him to be careful with words. "There's a cafe down the road," he said at last. "Nothing fancy, but it's warm, and they won't rush you. You look like you could use a seat." Clara hesitated. Every choice felt heavy now. Trust didn't come easy after what had just happened, but the idea of standing alone on the street felt worse. "All right," she said softly. They walked side by side, slow and quiet. Eli carried nothing but his worn bag, while Clara struggled with her suitcase. After a few steps, he reached out. "Here," he said. "Let me." She wanted to say no, but her arms were tired, and pride felt useless at the moment. She let him take it. He didn't comment on its weight or how little was inside. The cafe was small, with wooden tables and the smell of fresh bread. A few people sat inside, talking low. No one stared when Clara walked in, and that alone felt like a gift. They sat near the window. Eli ordered coffee and soup, then looked at her. "You should eat," he said. "I'll cover it." "I can pay," she said quickly. "I know," he replied, "but let me do this." She nodded. Fighting kindness felt harder than accepting it. As they waited, Clara stared at her hands. They were red and dry from the journey. She thought about how much she had given up to be here, the home she left, the job she trusted. All of it felt far away now, like another life. "You don't have to tell me anything," Eli said, breaking the silence. "But if you want to talk, I'll listen." Words pressed against her chest, needing somewhere to go. "I believed him," she said. "Every letter. Every promise." Eli didn't interrupt. "He said I was brave," she continued, "that he respected me, that we would build a life together." Her voice wavered, but she kept going. "I guess it's easier to write kind words than to live them." Eli nodded once. Some folks like the idea of a person more than the person themselves. The food arrived. The warmth of the bowl between her hands felt grounding. She took a spoonful and realized how hungry she was. Each bite made her feel a little more real, a little less like she might fade away. After they ate, Eli leaned back slightly. "What were you planning to do now?" he asked. Clara looked at him honestly. "I don't know. I don't have much money left. I can't go back." "Why not?" "There's nothing there for me anymore." He studied her for a moment. Not her clothes or her tired face, but the way she held herself. She was hurt, yes, but there was strength under it. The kind that didn't beg, didn't perform, just waited. "I've got a ranch outside town," he said slowly. "It's not much, but it's honest work. I could use help. Cooking, cleaning, keeping the place running. Her eyes lifted, cautious. "You're offering me a job?" He nodded. "A place to stay, too. Until you figure things out." She searched his face for tricks or hidden meaning. She found none. Just sincerity and a kind of careful respect. "And what would you want in return?" she asked. "Work," he said simply, "and honesty." Her chest tightened, not with fear this time, but with relief she hadn't allowed herself to feel yet. "I don't want charity," she said. "Good," he replied. "I don't offer it." That made her laugh softly, the sound surprising them both. They left the cafe together as the afternoon light stretched long across the street. Eli led her to a small wagon parked nearby. He loaded her suitcase without comment. The ride out of town was quiet. The road was rough, the land wide and open. Clara watched the horizon and felt something unfamiliar stirring inside her. Not hope exactly. Something slower, something steadier. The ranch appeared simple but solid. A small house, a barn, open land fenced in. It wasn't grand, but it felt real. "This is it," Eli said. Clara stepped down and looked around. The air smelled clean. The silence felt different here. Not empty. Peaceful. "You can take the spare room," he said. "Supper's usually simple. Tomorrow we'll talk about what needs doing." She nodded, emotion rising again, but this time it wasn't sharp. It was quiet and warm. "Thank you," she said, for not laughing. Ellie met her eyes. There was nothing funny about it. As the sun dipped lower, Clara understood something important. Her journey hadn't ended at the train station. It had only changed direction. And sometimes, the road you never plan to take is the one that saves you. The first night at the ranch felt strange to Clara. The room was small, with plain wooden walls and a narrow bed, but it was clean and quiet. A soft lamp sat on the table beside the bed, and a folded blanket rested neatly at the foot. She placed her suitcase near the wall and stood still for a moment, listening. No shouting, no mocking laughter, just the sound of wind moving through the grass outside. She sat on the edge of the bed and let out a long breath she didn't realize she had been holding. The day had drained her more than the long train ride ever could. Her body felt tired, but her mind refused to rest. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the train platform again. She heard the laugh. She felt the sting of it all over. Downstairs, she heard soft movements. Eli was making supper, careful not to make noise. He didn't call her down or rush her. That alone made her feel respected. When she finally came down, the table was already set. Simple food. Bread, stew, and warm tea. Nothing fancy, but it smelled good. Real. "It's perfect," she replied honestly. They ate quietly. Not an awkward silence, just an easy one. Clara realized how rare that felt. No pressure to explain herself. No need to pretend she was fine. After supper, Eli stood and cleared his plate. "You should rest," he said. "Tomorrow's another day." She nodded. "Good night. Good night." As she climbed back upstairs, Clara felt something unfamiliar settle in her chest. Safety. Not the kind promised in letters, but the kind shown through small actions. The next morning, sunlight slipped through the window and warmed her face. Clara woke slowly, confused for a second about where she was. Then she remembered. The train. The laughter. The cowboy. The ranch. She got dressed and went downstairs. Eli was already up, boots on, hat resting on the table. "Morning," he said. "Morning?" "There's no rush," he added. "But if you're up for it, I can show you around." She nodded. "I'd like that." The land stretched wide, quiet, and open. The air felt clean in her lungs. Eli showed her the barn, the animals, the storage shed. He explained things simply, without talking down to her. "You won't be expected to do anything you're not comfortable with," he said. "We'll take it slow." After being laughed at, being trusted felt powerful. As the days passed, she settled into a rhythm. Mornings were early. She helped with meals, cleaned, learned how things worked around the ranch. The work was honest and tiring, but it felt good to be useful again. Eli never hovered. He never asked personal questions unless she offered. When she made mistakes, he corrected her calmly. When she did something right, he noticed, but didn't make a big deal out of it. At night, Clara would sit on the small porch and watch the sky change colors. The stars felt closer out here. Sometimes Eli would sit nearby, sometimes he wouldn't. There was no pressure either way. One evening, Clara finally spoke the fear she had been carrying. "I don't want to be a burden," she said quietly. Ellie looked at her, surprised. "You're not. I mean it," she said. "I don't want this to be awkward later. You're helping. You're honest. That's enough." But even as she began to feel comfortable, doubt crept in. Late at night, she wondered if she was foolish to trust again so soon. Kindness didn't always last. She knew that now. One afternoon, as she was folding laundry, Eli approached with a careful look. "There's something I should be clear about," he said. "I didn't offer you a place because I expected anything else. No promises. No pressure." He looked up, meeting his eyes. "I understand. I just didn't want you wondering," he added. Relief washed over her. "Thank you for saying that." That night, Clara slept better than she had in weeks. A few days later, they went into town for supplies. Clara felt her stomach tighten as the buildings came into view. Memories rushed back. She kept her head down, but she could feel eyes on her. Eli noticed. He slowed his steps so she didn't feel rushed. "You don't owe anyone here anything," he said quietly. They passed the train station. Clara didn't look at it. She didn't need to. At the store, someone whispered her name. She froze. The groom stood near the counter, smirking. "Well, look at you," he said. "Didn't think you'd last long out here." Clara felt the old shame rise, but something was different now. She wasn't alone. "I'm doing just fine," she said calmly. Eli said nothing. He just stood beside her, steady and silent. The groom laughed again, but this time it sounded forced. "Guess you found yourself a helper." "I found respect." Silence followed. They left the store without another word. Outside, Clara's hand shook, but her spine felt straighter. "You didn't have to say anything," Eli said. "I wanted to," she replied. Back at the ranch, Clara felt stronger. She realized she wasn't just surviving anymore. She was rebuilding. Days turned into weeks. The ranch became familiar. The work felt natural. Laughter returned, slowly and unexpectedly. One evening, as they watched the sunset, Clara spoke softly. "I don't know what the future holds. None of us do. But I'm glad I didn't give up that day," she said. "So am I," he replied. She didn't yet know what forever looked like. She didn't need to. For the first time, she wasn't chasing promises. She was standing on solid ground, and that was enough. Time moved differently on the ranch. Days passed, then weeks, and slowly the seasons began to shift. Clara no longer counted time by fear or worry. She counted it by sunrise and sunset, by meals shared, by work finished with tired but satisfied hands. The ranch no longer felt like a place she was staying. It felt like a place she belonged. She had learned the routines well. She woke early, helped prepare breakfast, cleaned, mended clothes, and kept the house in order. Sometimes she worked outside, feeding animals or helping Eli with small tasks. He never treated her like she was weak or incapable. He explained things patiently and trusted her to learn. With each passing day, Clara stood a little straighter. Her laughter returned, not forced, but natural. She smiled more easily. The tired look in her eyes slowly faded. Eli noticed the change even if he didn't say much. He was a man of few words, but his actions spoke clearly. He made sure she had what she needed. He asked her opinion when making decisions around the house. He listened. One evening as they worked together fixing a broken shelf, their hands brushed. It was quick and accidental, but both of them paused. Clara felt a warmth rush through her, surprising and confusing. Eli stepped back slightly, respectful as always. "Sorry," he said. "It's all right," she replied, her voice steady even though her heart wasn't. They continued working, but something had shifted. Not rushed, not spoken. Just noticed. Clara began to realize that her feelings were changing. What had started as gratitude was becoming something deeper. She admired Eli's patience, his honesty, the way he never raised his voice, the way he treated others fairly. He didn't try to impress anyone. He simply was who he was. At the same time, fear whispered in her mind. She had trusted once and paid dearly for it. She promised herself she would be careful. One afternoon, news reached the ranch. The groom had been telling stories in town, twisting the truth, making jokes at her expense, painting himself as the one who had been wronged. Clara heard about it from a woman who passed by, her face flushed with anger and embarrassment. When Eli found out, his jaw tightened. "That's not right," he said. Clara shook her head. "I don't want trouble." A few days later, they went into town again. This time, Clara didn't lower her eyes. She walked beside Eli, calm and steady. They found the groom outside the cafe, surrounded by familiar faces. He smirked when he saw them. "Come to show off your new life?" he asked. Clara spoke before Eli could. "I came to live honestly, something you wouldn't understand." The crowd grew quiet. "You laughed at me when I needed kindness," she continued. "You don't get to speak about me now." The groom scoffed, but the sound lacked confidence. People were watching closely. Eli finally spoke. "She's earned her place. You lost yours." No shouting followed. No fight. Just truth spoken clearly. The groom turned away, his pride bruised more than his words ever could be. On the ride home, Clara's hands trembled, but her heart felt lighter. "I couldn't have done that before," she said. "You did it yourself," Eli replied. That night, as they sat under the open sky, Clara felt something settle inside her. She had faced her past and stood firm. She wasn't the same woman who stepped off the train. Weeks later, during a quiet evening, Eli spoke carefully. "I don't want to cross a line," he said, "but I need to be honest." She turned toward him, heart pounding. "I care about you," he continued. "Not because you needed help, because of who you are." She had waited to hear words like this, but now that they came, she understood their weight. "I care about you too," she said, "but I don't want to rush." "I wouldn't ask you to," he said. They agreed to move forward slowly. No promises, no pressure, just respect and time. From that moment, everything felt different but steady. They shared more conversations, more laughter. They supported each other through hard days and quiet ones alike. The town began to notice, not through gossip, but through change. Clara walked with confidence now. Eli smiled more often. Their bond was clear, even without loud words. One afternoon, Clara received a letter from her old town. It spoke of opportunities she once wanted. For a moment, she felt torn. That night, she shared it with Eli. "You don't have to stay because of me," he said gently. "I know," she replied. "That's why I want to." The choice was hers, freely made, and that made all the difference. As the stars came out, Clara realized something important. Love wasn't about grand promises or perfect plans. It was built quietly, through respect, patience, and standing beside someone even when no one was watching. The change did not come all at once. It came quietly, the way strong things often do. Clara and Eli did not wake up one morning and decide everything. Instead, they kept living their days side by side, letting time show them what words never could. Seasons passed. The ranch changed colors. Green turned to gold, gold to brown, and then back again. Clara grew more confident with every task she mastered. She no longer asked before helping. She simply did what needed to be done. The house reflected her care, the ranch reflected her effort, and slowly her past stopped following her like a shadow. The town noticed too. People who once whispered now nodded. Some greeted her kindly. Others asked her advice or offered help. Clara did not seek their approval, but she accepted their change with grace. She had learned that respect could not be demanded. It revealed itself over time. The groom faded into the background. His words lost power when no one listened anymore. He moved on, chasing attention elsewhere. Clara did not feel anger toward him anymore, only distance. And distance, she learned, could be healing. One evening, Eli and Clara sat on the porch watching the sun dip below the hills. The air was calm, warm, but gentle. Eli rested his elbows on his knees, staring out at the land he had worked for years. "This place used to feel heavy," he said quietly. "Heavy?" "Lonely," he corrected. "I didn't mind the quiet, but it felt empty." "I know that feeling." He glanced at her. "It doesn't feel that way anymore." Her heart stirred. "It doesn't for me either." They sat in silence, the comfortable kind. No pressure to fill it. No fear of it growing awkward. Just peace. Later that night, Clara lay awake thinking. She thought about the girl she had been on the train. Afraid, hopeful, unprepared. She wished she could reach back through time and tell that girl something important. She would tell her that endings were not always failures, that sometimes they were redirections. That laughter meant to hurt could lead to strength. That kindness, when real, never asked for anything in return. Weeks later, Eli asked her to ride with him to town, not for supplies, just to walk. Clara felt a small twist in her stomach, but she agreed. They walked slowly through the streets. People smiled as they passed. Someone greeted Eli by name. Someone else greeted Clara, too. It felt ordinary, and ordinary felt wonderful. They stopped near the old train station. Clara looked at it for the first time without pain. "That's where everything changed," she said. Eli nodded. "That's where you were brave." She smiled softly. "I didn't feel brave." "Most brave people don't," he said. They stood there for a moment, then turned away together. That night after supper, Eli cleared the table and stood still, like he was thinking hard about something. Clara noticed. "You all right?" she asked. He took a breath. "I want to ask you something, and you can say no." She met his eyes. "Okay. I don't believe in big speeches," he said, "or perfect timing, but I believe in choosing someone every day." Her heart beat faster. "I don't want to rescue you," he continued. "You don't need that. I want to walk beside you. If you'll have me." Clara felt tears rise, but they were not painful tears. They were full. "I've been choosing you too," she said. He smiled then, not wide, not loud, just real. They didn't rush into anything, no sudden changes, no dramatic announcements. But over time, their lives blended naturally. Shared plans, shared worries, shared joy. When they finally decided to marry, it was simple. No crowd, no show. Just a quiet promise made honestly. Not out of curiosity, but respect. They saw what had been built. They saw the truth of it. Clara stood tall that day, not because she had found someone, but because she had found herself. As years passed, the ranch thrived. Laughter filled the house. Hard days still came, but they were faced together. When trouble arrived, it did not break them. It strengthened them. Sometimes Clara would remember the train, the platform, the laugh that once felt like the end of her world. Now she knew better. That moment had not been the end. It had been the beginning of a life built on dignity, kindness, and choice. And when people asked how she ended up here, she never spoke of the pain first. She spoke of the cowboy who saw her cry and offered not promises,